Why didn't Aegon kill Aemond? Ryan Condal explains. HOTD Season 3 Finale. Spoiler warning for the House of the Dragon Season 3 finale. Aegon had every reason to kill Aemond. For most of Season 3, Aegon has been consumed by one goal: finding his brother and making him pay for everything that happened to him. Aemond was responsible for much of Aegon's suffering. After the events at Rook's Rest, Aegon was left badly injured, physically broken, and stripped of the power he once believed was his birthright. And Aegon blamed Aemond. So when the two brothers finally come face to face again in the Season 3 finale, viewers had a very obvious question. Would Aegon finally kill Aemond? Surprisingly, he doesn't. And Ryan Condal has now explained why. According to the House of the Dragon showrunner, Aegon's decision not to kill Aemond is actually one of the most important moments in his entire Season 3 character arc. Because Aegon isn't the same person he was at the beginning of the season. To understand this, we have to go back to what happened to Aegon. At the start of the story, Aegon is a deeply flawed king. He wants the crown, but he doesn't really understand what being king means. He is impulsive, insecure, irresponsible, and often more interested in pleasure than leadership. But after Rook's Rest, everything changes. Aegon loses his physical strength, he loses his position, he loses his confidence, and, perhaps most importantly, he is forced away from the world of kings and queens. Instead of sitting on the Iron Throne and being surrounded by people who constantly reinforce his importance, Aegon experiences life from the other side. He spends time among ordinary people. He experiences what it means to have almost nothing, and that experience changes him. Ryan Condal specifically described this as a major evolution for Aegon. The irony of Season 3, according to Condal, is that Aegon becomes more sympathetic and potentially more suited to ruling when he is away from the throne. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra becomes increasingly corrupted by being close to it. That contrast is extremely important. Aegon discovers something about himself while he is powerless. He begins to understand suffering. He begins to understand ordinary people. And he begins to understand that being king isn't simply about taking what you believe belongs to you. That is why killing Aemond in the finale would have undermined Aegon's entire character development. Condal essentially said that if Aegon simply arrived and killed Aemond, it wouldn't demonstrate his growth. And that's the key. Aegon still hates Aemond. He hasn't suddenly forgiven him. He hasn't forgotten what happened at Rook's Rest. He hasn't stopped wanting revenge. But there is a difference between wanting revenge and acting on it. Earlier in the season, Aegon is driven almost entirely by anger. He wants Aemond dead because he believes his brother destroyed his life. But the Aegon we see later in the season is more complicated. He has learned that violence doesn't necessarily give you what you want. In fact, violence has taken almost everything from him. And that makes his decision to spare Aemond much more meaningful. There is also something fascinating about the way the brothers have evolved in completely opposite directions. Aegon begins Season 3 as a king obsessed with the throne. Aemond begins as the brother who believes he is better suited to rule. But the closer Aemond gets to power, the more ruthless he becomes. Aemond increasingly sees people as pieces on a board. He is willing to make brutal decisions if they help him win the war. Aegon, meanwhile, experiences what it feels like to become one of those pieces. He becomes vulnerable, he becomes powerless, he becomes someone other people can exploit. And that experience changes the way he sees the world. This is why the finale isn't really about Aegon deciding whether he hates Aemond. He obviously does. The real question is whether Aegon will allow that hatred to control him, and this time he doesn't. That doesn't mean Aemond is safe forever. In fact, quite the opposite. Aegon's decision creates another layer of tension between the brothers. Because now, Aemond knows that Aegon had the opportunity to kill him and chose not to. And Aegon knows that Aemond is still alive. Their rivalry hasn't disappeared. It has simply changed. There is also a practical reason the show couldn't simply end Aemond's story here. Aemond remains one of the most important characters in the final stage of the Dance of the Dragons.
And if you're familiar with George R. Martin's Fire and Blood, you already know that Aemond's ultimate fate comes much later. His story leads toward the battle above the God's Eye, where Aemond and Daemon Targaryen eventually meet in one of the most famous confrontations in the Targaryen Civil War. So Aegon killing Aemond in Season 3 would have completely changed the trajectory of the final season. Instead, the show preserves that future conflict. But more importantly, it allows Aegon's character arc to continue. The fascinating part is that Aegon may now actually have the potential to become a better king than the man who originally claimed the throne. And that is exactly what makes his Season 3 transformation so interesting. He didn't become better because he won. He became better because he lost. He lost his power, he lost his physical strength, he lost his sense of superiority. And through that suffering, he gained something he didn't have before: perspective. That's why Ryan Condal's explanation is so important. Aegon sparing Aemond isn't simply a plot decision, it is a character decision. The old Aegon would have probably allowed his anger to dictate what happened next. The new Aegon understands that being king requires something more than revenge. It requires judgment, and perhaps, sometimes, restraint. But there is one final irony here. Aegon may have become more sympathetic while living away from the throne, while Rhaenyra has become increasingly ruthless as she gets closer to holding it. That creates a fascinating parallel between the two potential rulers. The throne changes everyone who gets too close to it, but Aegon's journey suggests that sometimes the person who loses power is the one who learns the most about what power actually means. So, why didn't Aegon kill Aemond? Because according to Ryan Condal, Aegon has changed. He is still angry, he still has unfinished business with his brother, and he still has reasons to want revenge.
But simply killing Aemond would have shown us the same Aegon we already knew. Sparing him shows us a different Aegon, a more experienced Aegon, a more sympathetic Aegon, and potentially a better king. Of course, in Westeros, mercy always comes with a price. Aegon may regret sparing Aemond. Aemond may eventually turn against him again. And their rivalry could still have a major role to play in the final chapter of the dance. But for now, Aegon has made his choice. He had the chance to answer betrayal with murder, and he walked away. That may ultimately prove to be one of the most important decisions Aegon has ever made. Because in a story where almost every character becomes more brutal as the war continues, Aegon's greatest sign of growth may be the moment when he finally chooses not to kill his own brother. And that is why Aegon didn't kill Aemond in the House of the Dragon Season 3 finale. Not because he stopped hating him, but because, for the first time, Aegon is learning that being a king means having the power to kill someone, and choosing when not to use it.